All right, so from here we can go into topic 2, which I guess, Nate, you can probably lead this one if you want.
Yeah, so basically we were trying to think of topics because we actually didn't have much to review this week. And we couldn't really think of anything, so we had I had a list from a long time ago when Jacob and I had to do a episode by ourselves where I just took a bunch of viewer suggested topics. And so I have like 4 or 5 saved up. And so we decided to do one of Rob's, who listens a lot and is in Discord a lot. But he was wondering, or he wanted us to discuss why we think guy groups are so much more popular than girl groups in terms of K-pop. I guess I could start. I mean, the obvious answer we're all going to give is just because the majority of the K-pop fandom's female, and younger. So they're going to naturally go towards guy groups. I mean, it's the same thing that happened here in America in the 90s. Yeah. It's like in early 2000s, it's like why Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were the biggest things in the world. Because most of the people that listen to pop music are teenage girls, to generalize. Obviously we're all not teenage girls.
Yeah, because I loved it. And no, I loved NSYNC and freaking Backstreet Boys. You kidding me? That was
totally
my
a
life.
Millennium album.
Yeah. I have their album somewhere in like the packaging and everything, but
but yeah, so yeah, that's the pretty obvious reason. I think it's probably more, I don't know, I feel like it's more accepted too, outside, or like especially for international fans to be into guy groups, because I don't know, there's just a stigma where like if guys are watching girl groups, it's creepy, or like, whereas like girls watching guy groups is more okay.
Yeah, I definitely hear that a lot too. Like a lot of people, like, so I'm completely open about that. I like K-pop, like in like college and stuff. So a lot of people have a misunderstanding and think I'm just into K-pop because I like the girl groups. Which, I mean, it's part of it, sure, but like I legitimately just love the music. Yeah. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I wouldn't be.
Yeah, none of us would.
I wouldn't have a library of like almost 3,000 songs. So, yeah, I think again, like what Nate said, like there's less of a stigma towards girls being into like boy bands and stuff like that. So. And it's also something that's already familiar with people because it's been a thing like for much longer. I feel like, at least on a big scale.
Yeah, you had One Direction and Justin Bieber, and like we said, going back to NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and stuff.
Yep.
Also, and I guess just to sort of follow up on that, I'd say, like, besides the fact that because it's all female, or mostly female in terms of K-pop fandom, both inside of Korea and internationally, it's just, there's a lot more instances where you have crossover when it comes to boy groups, where guys are more willing to listen to boy groups than girls are willing to listen to girl groups, just because, I mean, this isn't obviously like a kind of a generalization, but I mean, I've seen like firsthand evidence of it, like in person, where some girls are just straight up like, I don't listen to girl groups, and for one reason or another, but like some people or some explanations for it have been sort of like and this is like really extreme netizens kind of stuff, where they sort of see girl groups as a threat to they're like, oh, I don't want this girl group touching like my oppa in this boy group or whatever, because they're only allowed to like belong. It definitely correlates to that sort of mentality where it's where we get the term idol, where you're literally idolizing these people. And I feel like when it comes to K-pop fans, they're less likely, female fans are less likely to become obsessed and idolize female groups than they are with boy groups. And I mean, obviously there are exceptions to this rule. There are a lot of like hardcore like almost girl group only female fans.
Yeah.
I mean, like Soshified, like that's almost all girl run if I remember correctly. Because when I went to the event back in 2011, the first K-pop event I ever went to, it was hosted by members of Soshified, and they were all girls.
Yep.
Yeah, and most of the people were there were all girls. So it's just despite the lack of crossover, there's still an overwhelmingly female presence in K-pop. So that's why it just that's why it sort of looks that way.
That's for international, it's different too, because just overall in general, international fans are more likely to listen to both. And especially because in Korea, you really only follow one group.
It's the concept of multi-fandom is like that's taboo basically in like K-pop culture, where if you're pretty much, it's kind of like I remember like you were saying like, oh, the reason you didn't like 21 and like I think like 4 minutes. Yeah, you didn't like 21 at first.
No, I love 4 minutes. It was just 21.
Yeah, you didn't like 21 at first because you thought they were a threat to 4 minute, or like they were a threat to
Sochi.
No,
yeah,
it wasn't SNSTs. A threat. Nobody was a threat to SNSD. No, it was just because they were rivals.
Yeah. So that's why we have things like Black Ocean, and like we have a lot of like EXO versus BTS fan wars. Which I mean, granted, that's a lot of international fans as well. It gets a lot more amplified in Korea, where basically you dedicate your entire life to one group and you never switch.
Mm-hmm.
I think one other point that I thought of at least was like a lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of what pushes the views and stuff on videos are casual fans who just are looking from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And most people from the outside are going to be like be more into, I feel like, looking at like, oh, it's a boy band, I like boy bands, I'll watch this, like, you know, that sort of thing. So I feel like the casual observer would be more attracted to click on a, you know, BTS or EXO or GOT7 video than a I feel like Twice is the exception to this.
Yeah, Twice,
like, you know, a girl group video, for lack of
pretty much. Twice
example.
And like Red Velvet to some degree are probably the only exceptions, at least in the current landscape.
Blackpink as well.
Blackpink, I think, maybe more internationally than they are in Korea.
Oh, you mean in Korea? Yeah,
in Korea,
okay.
But yeah,
I was speaking overall, but
but there are exceptions to the rule. I thought it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where it feels like members of guy groups definitely get a lot more exposure when it comes to either being in CFs or when it comes to being in like Variety or doing all these sort of different events that sort of leave them in the public consciousness and the public spotlight, where I guess while there are a lot of female idols that definitely get a lot of those opportunities as well, it's definitely a lot more reserved than male idols would be. And I mean, obviously, and because like the whole concept, and just with like female idols or currently active female idols that act is just kind of like a landmine of just like things you can't like basically just like pretty much there. I forget what show Wendy was on, or not Wendy, Joy was on. It was like some drama or whatever, where basically like she had a kiss scene and she basically looked like a dead fish throughout the entire scene, just because she's probably like thinking like, oh fuck, if I actually look like I'm into this, everyone's going to hate me for the rest of my life. Basically, it's just like there's just too much like sort of concerns when it comes to having like active female idols or become actresses or just be do anything other than just making music basically.
I think another thing as well is it can also become sort of a chicken and egg scenario where, like, to begin with, there's only like, I could count on only maybe one hand the amount of groups that can stand up to the biggest guy groups toe to toe. You know, that'd be SNSD, Red Velvet, 21, Blackpink. Actually, I think Blackpink's really popular still in
Korea.
Korea, yeah. And then did I say Red Velvet already?
I don't believe so.
I don't know.
Okay, Red Velvet as well, because they actually have a lot of female fans.
Yeah,
like,
Red Velvet's...
like a few years ago, one of the exchange students, she was like a huge Red Velvet stan, like from Korea. So yeah, it's just like there's not an abundance of giant girl groups. I feel like it's getting better now, like in the new generation. So
Twice has definitely brought it back. To the levels of like Soshi and
SNSD.
stuff. Yeah, because like after SNSD started like losing steam, it definitely girl groups kind of fell off for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, SNSD was also, not for nothing, they were the group that really, they started girl groups back up.
Yeah, exactly.
On a big scale, that is. Like, sure, there was, like, Wonder Girls had just debuted. I think Kara had just debuted as well.
Yeah, Kara was right before, I think.
And, like, they were complicit in that as well. But, like, SNSD, like, they really were the ones to jumpstart it. And, you know, they really, I guess they lived up to their name, Girls' Generation. Like, they started something big. And, so yeah, I think there actually is a shift starting to happen, slowly but surely at least, where at least the girls are picking up more of a market share than they did previously.
Definitely. And so, not to bring everything back to Produce 48 all the time, but I do think like it's worth mentioning that it definitely is a sort of a genius or sort of concept for Akipi to bring it over to Korea, because again, in like J-pop, or at least when it comes to like female J-pop idols and idol groups like 48 Group, it's exclusively male. There's like almost no female fans basically, and much in the same way that it's almost like when it comes to like male groups, it's just mostly female fans. Just because I guess it's just like it's sort of almost like a inverse situation where it's kind of almost less I feel like it's almost less accepted for females to be really into idol groups, whereas it's so when you think
it's
of
opposite in the US.
we're almost like in opposite of Korea, where in Japan it's almost like the pretty much when you're thinking otaku, like the super like super anime and idol groups, almost exclusively you think of a male, like a male that's just like super like obsessed with that sort of thing. You rarely think of female fans in that situation. So it's a genius idea to sort of bring consciousness and publicity for the 48 groups into Korea, where most of the fans are going to be female. So that's actually a really like surprising or just interesting wrinkle to it, where most of the new fans are female to this, whereas like basically most female like K-pop fans are just most female fans wouldn't really touch the 48 groups, just because it's just such a different style, or it's not necessarily a style that appeals to female fans necessarily.
Yeah, it's definitely pushed more to engage male fans.
I mean, obviously they have like beach like music videos and everything, so that's not gonna appeal much outside of like people that really love like Yuri and stuff.
I definitely do think that's interesting, though, the point you made where how in Japan it's mostly, like, male otaku, whereas, like, in the US or in Korea it's, like, fangirls. Like, they're basically the same thing, however, they're thought of as completely different.
Yeah, the concept of fangirl is just, I guess it's less of a
It's female otaku, basically.
Yeah, it's less of a stereotype in Japan, I feel like, than it is in the rest of the world, where, just, like, that stretches outside of just K-pop, just like, even when I go to like stuff like Paramore or 21 Pilots, like it feels like most women are just it's like mostly women that are into like, or that seem to dedicate themselves to like pop. I guess it's just maybe I don't know, maybe it's just because like with men there's just almost sort of a stigma to like. It's just like it's sort of like a stigma. It's like, oh, you can't be into popular music. You're only supposed to be like into certain types of music. And I mean, I break all that because I love going to Paramore concerts, and I used to love going to 21 Pilots concerts before everyone there was just like 13 years old. I'm just like, fuck that. I'm not trying. I go to non K-pop concerts to escape the fact that everyone's 13 years old. But yeah, that's definitely sort of an interesting correlation that or it just seems like female fans are more willing to be like super dedicated to one group, whereas like, I mean, you do have exceptions. I mean, obviously you have like most like Deadheads, like fans of Grateful Dead seem to be male. So it definitely seems like it varies by genre, where it just like, it seems like males
depends on the type of music.
Yeah, men are just like less likely to sort of dedicate themselves to pop music, where they'd probably be more likely to dedicate themselves to like rock or like super underground hip hop, which is almost all. Yeah, like I remember the first time I saw Year the Ox at Jesse's. They opened for Jesse. They were like, "Wow, we've never seen this many females in the crowd before." Because like most people that listen to hardcore underground hip hop are just all dudes. So yeah, it's an interesting sort of crossover situation where K-pop gives exposure to sort of genres that you wouldn't normally listen to in that sort of way.
I think it also might be a generational thing where, like definitely. You were talking about Grateful Dead fans are mostly like male, whereas I feel like nowadays most rock fans that I meet are actually like women. who are into like rock bands, particularly like punk and stuff like that. It's usually girls.
There's a huge like
than guys. Whereas I feel like metal is definitely more men that I meet that are into metal than women. But like with stuff like punk or just general like alternative and stuff like that, it's usually girls.
Yeah, it's a lot more balanced, and I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of like female fans that are like into like I don't know, like Gwar or like some like super like hardcore like metal sort of things. But yeah, metal is definitely a genre that's sort of definitely more skewed male, and I'm sure Nate, you know way more about that than I do. You've been to way more metal concerts.
I mean, I haven't been to too many, but yeah, definitely skews male. One actually thing to go a bit back to something Andrew said was like comparing otakus to fangirls, like. You said like it's a stereotype, and the interesting thing there is otakus are a stereotype, but fangirls are just an accepted part of. Like I feel like teenage girls it's just generally accepted for you to be into a guy group, where a guy being into a girl group is a stereotype. Like that's it's a stigma. Like I said, it's a stigma. So I think that right there is another is a big factor in that like guys don't want to be stigmatized because they like girl groups, or even if they like guy groups. There's like a stigma there too, that like you're gay or if you like guy groups.
And I mean like that notion of just like girls like being really into like any like male art, that stretches back to like the beginning of music, when like girls would faint over like Elvis and the Beatles and everything. Exactly. So that's just
the beginning of popular music like was based upon that of fangirls. So I think that's like right there is the root of the issue, that it's a stereotype for guys to be into pop music, but for girls it's just generally accepted to be okay. So there's less male fans in that because of that, or at least less open male fans. Yeah,
because I mean, you some degree you kind of have to hide it, or just like, or to some like. Compared to like the actual, you just
don't give a fuck.
Or I mean, you just after a point, you just stop giving a shit. But I mean, like compared to like the. For me, oh god.
Well, for me, I've went through all of high school like this, so I just quit caring after a certain point. So.
I didn't get into it until college, but I mean, I've definitely surpassed most of the actual like my actual Korean classmates that I. Like sort of got to know in college, where they'd only be sort of surface level knowledge, whereas like I was super into it. So it definitely, we are the sort of exceptions and rarities to this, but I feel like it is starting to change. I mean, at KCON, I mean, there's definitely a lot more like guy fans, especially when it comes to like, especially since they've definitely did a better job of balancing both guy and girl groups this year than it was last year, where it was just like 90% like Nuku guy groups and just like maybe one or two good, like it was like twice in like, I don't know, just like so.
It's like different.
Yeah, basically that was it. So.
That's actually one thing I noticed actually is that there might be a lot less guys at like KCON at events like that, but there's
do go.
A lot more of a percentage of them that are more into it like we are, where they know like literally everything. Yeah. Whereas I feel like a very large chunk of the girls that are there, like obviously there's a ton of hardcore girls there, but I mean like there's a big chunk of them there that aren't as into it as we are, and they're more into like there to see one group or just a couple groups and
they're very rare, or I feel like they're a lot more willing to be like all arounders, whereas it definitely feels like and I guess it's just the nature of boy groups, where like BTS and EXO, where you just end up dedicating yourself to one of them, so it's hard to follow a lot of other groups in that sort of way. But when it comes to like, I guess it's just sort of just the circumstance of you rarely get to see girl groups here in America, so it's hard to be a fan of just one girl group. Whereas basically, like boy group stands have been eaten since like 2012, basically. Where
they come like every year.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier for you to become like, as an international fan, it's a lot easier for you to just dedicate your life to one group than it is to one boy group than it is to one girl group, just because the likelihood of you seeing them like every year or multiple times a year, it's a lot more than with girl groups, unfortunately, and that's something I hope does change. I mean, and I do see like like more and more guys getting into K-pop as it sort of starts to transcend niche territory and sort of just, I mean, now that it's becoming sort of something that basically all they've been talking about it on like local news is BTS and how people were like camping outside since the Thursday to see the concert on Saturday sort of thing. So once it hits that sort of like a mainstream level of recognition, then maybe we'll start to get more guys or more male fans that sort of are willing to basically just like be like, yeah, I'm a fan of K-pop, so what? So that's my hope, at least.
Yeah, I definitely identify with your thing on like you can't really stand just one girl group. Like if I literally only stand SNSD, like I will probably never see them ever. Literally, will probably never ever see them in concert. But like, you know, that's I guess is the plight of the
girl group
K-pop girl group stan. Yeah, as you know,
especially
there's that possibility that international fans, you might never see them in concert. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I'm really hoping
live in Korea,
that like,
you can see them like every week. But
yeah, definitely.
Yes, that'll be me next semester. Please, please have like tons of concerts. Like I'm looking at you, Taeyeon.
You just gotta skip all of school and go to music shows every week.
But I need to pass.
Okay, I think that was pretty good. Any final thoughts?
No, that's pretty much it.
All of mine. So.
And I mean, yeah, if you have if you have any thoughts on this, definitely let us know. Especially if we definitely have a lot. I feel like we have a lot more male K-pop fans in our community than in others normally. So
yeah.
So definitely, like, I'd like to hear from you guys, even or if you're a new listener or viewer just stumbling upon this topic, yeah, just definitely let us know like what your sort of experience is as one of like the few male K-pop fans, and sort of like what you would think or what you think the sort of trajectory is when it comes to boy groups versus girl groups, because yeah, it's definitely something that's still open for discussion.
I'm also curious to see a girl's perspective from like the outside as well, and also a female girl group stan, like their perspective also. Yeah,
definitely.
So yeah, because definitely, I guess leave your comments down below for sure. I'm curious to read them.
Yeah, because the only few I know of probably are just like Aubrey and Paige, in like on a personal level, and then maybe there's one person I follow on Twitter that's dedicated to Blackpink. So yeah, so like there are few and far between, but definitely just make your voice heard because we're very interested in this perspective.
Yep.
For me, I like this song a lot better than her other solo stuff. Has much better production because it was with SM.
Yeah, it was done in-house
instead of being independent. The only thing is I still think she needs to work on her lyrics.
Yeah, as a lyricist, like, she's very weak.